You're standing outside a downtown Seattle courthouse on a gray November morning, watching reporters set up their cameras. Something big is about to be decided. Not a trial, a vote count. And whatever happens in the next few hours will decide how easy it is for someone in your state to buy a gun. That single morning in 2018 quietly rewrote the rules for every gun owner and every police department in Washington. Nearly 60% of voters said yes to it. 40% fought it in court for years afterward. How did a blue-leaning coastal city end up at the center of one of the most contested gun law battles in the country? To understand that, you have to go back further than you'd expect. Not to a courtroom, to a restaurant. It's February 1983. You're in the Chinatown International District, a few blocks from where you might grab dumplings today. Behind an unmarked door on Maynard Alley sits a private gambling club called Wah Mee. 13 people are inside on a slow winter night. 3 armed men walk in. Within minutes, 13 people are bound, robbed, and shot. Only one survives. It becomes known as the Wah Mee massacre, the deadliest mass shooting in Washington state history at the time. Decode that phrase. Mass shooting simply means multiple people shot in the same incident in one location in a short window. Here's what most people don't realize. Seattle in the early 1980s had almost none of the gun regulation infrastructure you'd expect today. No universal background check requirement. No waiting periods for most purchases. No red flag law, a court order that temporarily removes firearms from someone a judge believes is dangerous. None of it existed. The massacre shocked the city, but it didn't immediately change state law. It took decades and more tragedies before Washington's gun laws caught up to its progressive reputation. Then came May 2012 and Capitol Hill. You're walking past Cafe Racer, a small coffee shop on Roosevelt Way. On the morning of May 30th, a gunman opens fire inside, killing 4 people before fleeing. He kills a 5th victim later that day during a carjacking downtown, then takes his own life as police close in. The Cafe Racer shooting becomes one of the defining traumas of Capitol Hill's modern history. Does a shooting in a neighborhood you know change how you feel walking down that same street the next week? For a lot of people here, it did. The tragedy fed into a broader reckoning, not just about gun access, but about how Seattle's police department responded to crisis. That reckoning collided with something already unfolding. In December 2011, the Department of Justice had opened an investigation into the Seattle Police Department after years of complaints about excessive force. In 2012, that led to a consent decree, a legally binding agreement, overseen by a federal judge, requiring reforms to use of force policy, training, and accountability. Decode that term. A consent decree is a court-supervised roadmap for change, backed by real legal consequences for noncompliance. It reshaped how officers in your city were trained to de-escalate and respond to exactly the kind of crisis that unfolded outside Cafe Racer. You might assume a decade of federal oversight turned Seattle's police into a national model overnight. It didn't work that cleanly. Compliance took years longer than predicted, and the debate over how much authority the department should hold kept resurfacing, especially after 2020. The consent decree wasn't a single fix. It's still shaping policy conversations in your city today. Now bring the gun law thread back because it never fully separated from policing. By the mid-2010s, gun violence data across Washington kept pointing to the same pattern. Firearms bought legally were ending up with people who, under existing law, weren't supposed to have them. State lawmakers tried tightening restrictions and hit resistance. So advocates went straight to the voters.
That's what led to Initiative 1639 in November 2018. Here's what it actually did in plain English. It raised the legal purchase age for semi-automatic rifles from 18 to 21. It required enhanced background checks for those rifles, mirroring rules already applied to handguns. It mandated safe storage, meaning owners could face liability if a minor or prohibited person accessed an improperly stored gun and caused harm. And it created a 10-day waiting period before a buyer could take one home. Picture the campaign season. Grocery store parking lots covered in signs. Local news running dueling segments, grieving families on one side, rural gun owners who felt targeted on the other. Nearly 60% of the state voted yes. It passed, but passing wasn't the end. It was closer to the beginning. Within days, the National Rifle Association and the Second Amendment Foundation filed a federal lawsuit in a Seattle courtroom, arguing the initiative violated constitutional rights. Some rural county sheriffs publicly announced they wouldn't enforce it. Attorney General Bob Ferguson warned local officials could face civil liability if they refused enforcement and someone got hurt. For a while, Washington had a genuinely strange legal landscape. One law, wildly different enforcement depending on which county line you stood on. A federal judge eventually upheld Initiative 1639 in full. The law stood, but the fight revealed something about your state. Seattle had become the epicenter of a legal and cultural battle stretching far beyond its own limits. Every subsequent statewide gun measure since is traced back to the same Seattle-based advocacy groups, the same legal opposition, and the same downtown courtrooms. So think about what that means for you, walking through Seattle today. Every background check a gun store runs, every 10-day wait, every safe storage requirement quietly built into how firearms are sold here, traces back through decades of tragedy and reform. Back to a gambling club on Maynard Alley in 1983. Back to a coffee shop on Roosevelt Way in 2012. Back to a federal consent decree that forced the police department to rebuild how it trains for crisis. Back to a ballot measure fought over in living rooms and courtrooms in 2018. None of it happened quickly. None of it happened cleanly. Washington still has some of the most contested gun laws in the country. But the next time you walk past a gun store sign about age requirements or hear a headline about a new state firearm law, you'll know it isn't an isolated update. It's the latest chapter in a fight that's been running through your city for more than 40 years. You're standing outside that same downtown courthouse again, except now you understand what you're actually looking at. Not a single vote count. A city that became a battleground, one tragedy, one lawsuit, and one reform at a time.
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like it and follow and subscribe for similar content.